The thing is, I feel like I do so much damage. You know, like, most of the bosses don't last very long. And what's funny is, a lot of people were telling me, like, go upgrade your equipment, go upgrade your equipment, but, like, I was pretty strong before I even upgraded my equipment. Lavos. An extraterrestrial life form that is thought to have fallen from the heavens 65 million years ago. On the timeline that existed before history was changed, Lavos was assumed to have slept deep below the planet's surface, sleeping and consuming the planet's energy up until the day of destruction known as the Apocalypse. There are those who believe that 12,000 years ago, the legendary ancient magical civilization known as Zeal came into contact with Lavos. That fateful encounter is said to have resulted in Zeal disappearing from the surface of the planet within the space of a single night. However, the very existence of the ancient civilization of Zeal has never been proven, so up till this day, this theory cannot be confirmed. On some timelines, Lavos appeared on the surface of the planet in the year 1999 and brought the world to ruins. However, a group of young time travelers saw where their planet's history was heading and, through their actions, rewrote time. This very research facility exists on that new timeline, in a world where, thanks to the defeat of Lavos by the young adventurers, the apocalypse never happened. On a temporal vector where human civilization continued to evolve unhampered. All the data on Lavos that was obtained from tracing different parallel world possibilities has proven to be volatile, with fluctuating discrepancies. Perhaps at this point in time it is nearly impossible to obtain any true information about Lavos. So, I don't want an answer to this, but I'm very curious about something. Let me talk to this guy first. The DNA records are poems and music. Adenine and thymine, guanine, I can't read it because it's in the blue light. Guanine and cytosine, rhythm and melody. Perhaps the DNA of the ones who make contact with the flame is recomposed by the sound they generate within. I wonder if life forms are just dreaming in an endless flow of music. Possibly. Rainbow shell. That's a funny meme. So, like I said, I don't want an answer to this, but I'm just thinking out loud here. When I started this game, everybody told me that this game was like the spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger, but not really a sequel. Like, while we were playing Chrono Trigger, a lot of people asked about Chrono Cross, and everyone said, like, it's not a sequel, but it sort of is. Like, it's kind of a sequel, but, you know, not really. It has references to Chrono Trigger, but it's not a sequel. Like, more often than not, people said it's not a sequel. And from what I've been told so far, I kind of disagree. Like, I kind of get what they're saying in that in this game, the Chrono Trigger timeline was erased. But it's still a sequel. You know what I mean? Like, it still comes after Chrono Trigger, and it's still in the same universe, and it's still a sequel. Like, I would definitely 100% call this a sequel. I see no reason to call it not a sequel. Model of brain analysis. Model of brain behavior. Model of lower animal brain. Model of brain evolution. Well, I don't care to explain it. Like, I'm just saying how, like, it's a sequel, though. Like, I don't really care how they're connected. To me, if they're connected, then it's a sequel, like, bar none. Like, in this universe, Chrono Trigger happened. It's just the timeline got erased. But, like, that doesn't matter. It's still a sequel to me. You know what I mean? Like, if I were to make Last of Us, and then Last of Us 2 happened 10,000 years later, it's still a sequel. It still happens after the first game. Even if none of the characters are the same and, you know, it's 10,000 years later, like, it's still a sequel. Like, would you not call that a sequel? Memory scanning and rewinding is not that difficult of a thing. As a matter of fact, it is possible to simulate the thoughts and feelings of each individual. These are all just electric signals that flow around the circuitry of the brain, after all. The vessels of flesh can be reproduced through cloning, and the soul stored within these fleshly vessels can be simulated as well. Thus, one could even go as far as to say that death itself no longer exists. Of course, the expiration of an individual being as a variation within the species still occurs. Overall, we can reverse the old maxim and say that where there is no death, there will be life. See, like, what makes it an indirect sequel? Just the fact that the first timeline was erased? Because to me, I know this is like getting way too into it. I apologize. But to me, the fact that an event occurred where the timeline of the original game was erased makes it a sequel. Does that make sense? Like, the original timeline was erased, but that happening is an event. So that makes it a sequel to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the fact that it happened, like, if you just said, if you made Chrono Cross and nothing that happened in Chrono Trigger ever happened in Chrono Cross, but there were, like, small references to it as, like, a meme, then I'd call it an indirect sequel. But I think this is a direct sequel because there's an event that occurs where the events that happened in Chrono Trigger get erased. But they existed. Like, in order for the events to get erased, they had to have occurred. Right? Like, in this game, Chrono Trigger happened. It got erased, but it happened. So, it's a direct sequel. Because an event happened where Chrono Trigger got erased in this game. You know what I mean? But we are following the events of Chrono Trigger. Like, because at the beginning of this game, or at some point in this game, Chrono Trigger got erased. So, we are. Like, the events happened. Well, yeah, but to get to a new timeline, you had to have at one point been on the old timeline. That's what I'm saying. Like, at some point, Chrono Cross was Chrono Trigger, and then something happened and it got erased, which I guess is like the final, what happened at the end of Chrono Trigger is what erased the timeline. It just depends on what you mean by direct sequel. Like, some people would say that a direct sequel is you have to literally be the same characters. And then other people would say if it's in the same universe, then it's a direct sequel. You know what I mean? To me, the events of Chrono Trigger happened in this game, which means it's a direct sequel. To me. Because we know that Chrono existed in this universe. It's just his timeline got erased. But he exists. In this game, Chrono, Ayla, everyone exists in this game. They all exist. Everything they did happened. The people in this lab know about them. They know about Lavos. They know about the events that occurred. It exists. But in the world that we spawned into at the beginning of the game, that timeline was erased. But, like, not only did it happen, but these people know it happened. Like, they know that the timeline got erased. It got erased, but they still know it exists. So that makes it even more of a direct sequel in my mind. Because, like, if it got erased and not a single person in this entire game ever knew it happened, then I could see the argument where, like, okay, if no one even knows it exists, then it doesn't exist. But these people literally know. They're literally telling us, like, it happened, but it got erased. So to me, that makes it a direct sequel. I mean, granted, none of the characters are the same and yada yada, but we literally met Chrono and, you know, everyone from the previous game in a weird flashback thing. So I'd say it's a direct sequel. But I could see where people like said, you know, it's a sequel, but it's not a sequel, and like, you know what I mean? Could you call this a spin-off? Maybe. I could see the argument. I could see the argument for saying, like, because if you go by what I'm saying, then you could kind of say, like, Mario Kart is a sequel, because technically it's the same characters in the same world, so therefore sequel. So I kind of see your argument there. Like, you know, if we go by my logic, then, like, everything ever is a sequel, as long as it has any characters that apply. So I guess I have to kind of rein it down a little bit, but the problem, I'm sorry we're delving so far deep into this, I apologize, YouTube. But it's interesting to me to talk about this. I think the problem is when we think of the word sequel, we're thinking timeline-wise. So, like, it has to occur after the previous game. And that's where this is confusing, because yes, this does happen after Chrono Trigger, but Chrono Trigger was erased from existence. So it's more of an alternate timeline rather than after. So, like, what do you call that? There's, like, no word, you know? I don't think it's right to call it a spin-off, but it's certainly not a prequel or a sequel, because it happens completely parallel. So maybe indirect sequel is right. Maybe that is the right word for it, because it's not... If you're going by timeline standard, then I guess indirect sequel, because you can't really call it a sequel because it's, like, next to it. I don't know. I'm kind of just looking at it in terms of, like, if you have these two games, Chrono Cross and Chrono Trigger, sitting next to each other, and somebody asks you, like, oh, is Chrono Cross a sequel to Chrono Trigger? I'd probably just tell them yes. You know, like, it is. It's the game that happens after Chrono Trigger. Now, with the whole time travel thing and different universe thing, is it technically a sequel? Maybe not. But, like, to me, when I'm playing Chrono Trigger and people come into the chat and ask, is Chrono Cross a sequel? I'd probably just tell them yes. Like, yeah, it is. It happens after Chrono Trigger. The events of Chrono Cross happen after Chrono Trigger happens, gets erased, and then Chrono Cross starts. So, like, you know what I mean? Even though none of the characters are the same and the game's very different, I mean, it's almost like calling Final Fantasy VIII a sequel to Final Fantasy VII. Like, yes and no. Not really. It's in the same series, but it's a different game. I don't know. Anyways, let's continue. How's it going, Ataru? We control human emotions by using neurotransmitters. That means by manipulating the nerve transmitters inside their brains, it's possible to control the feelings and even the personalities of humans. Fate uses the records of Fate to connect directly to the brains of the humans with whom they come in contact. Fate not only imprints what actions the humans should take into their brains, but also rewrites their personalities and feelings. So this is really interesting. The life forms on the planet developed from single-celled microorganisms to protozoans. Then from fish to amphibians, the reptiles to mammals, and eventually to humans. Beginning with the cerebral neocortex, which only exists in higher mammals, the anthropod brain enlarged at an accelerating pace until it became the human brain we know. Could the reason for the abnormal development of the human brain be the biological contamination caused by Lavos? That would mean that humans are really a heterogeneous life form of foreign matter as far as the planet is concerned. Humans are a sudden mutation caused by the contact with Lavos, an alien life form that fell to the planet from space. That is why humans are, biologically speaking, unbalanced and half-finished. Internally inconsistent and disconnected, the human existence is plagued by contradictions. An incomplete species torn between love and hatred whose very being is self-contradictory. From the planet's viewpoint, humans are just destroyers and a cursed yet perhaps pathetic blight on the world. Well, that's depressing. I really wish they would bring up the boxes. Like, I know that we don't know who these things are, so they don't bring up boxes, but it's really hard to read this text over all this, like, super busy screen. So it feels like this takes place in, like... So we're in, like, a future where stuff got so advanced that, like, humans basically don't even matter anymore. Because, like, we can just write humans to be whatever we want them to be. So, like, we're not really individuals anymore. That's kind of weird. Yeah, next year, 2020. This takes place in 2020. No, they said before it's like 2,400. Which isn't, when you think about it, really isn't that far away. It is, but it isn't. Could you imagine, like, if 4 generations from now, life was just like, you know, we could just rewrite whatever we want? Like, that's not that far away. That's like your grandchildren's grandchildren. It's not that far away. Alright, I want to use the summon. Dang it. We're gonna make this happen. Gunner, get ya. Well, it's actually called Get Ya. Oh my god. That was something. Alright, Karsh. Let's get that summon. Alright. Oh, I can't use it. Why not? Do I have to have my field effect, like, full green? I bet you that's what it is. Because it's got that little star. So this whole time, this field effect thing has been for summons, which I haven't gotten until now. Interesting. I'm never going to be able to summon anything. By the time I get full field effect, everything's going to be dead. I'm interested to hear if any YouTube people want to comment on the whole sequel debate. I'm interested to hear what people say. I think it's... If you just take sequel by strictly timeline, like the strict definition of the word sequel, then it's pretty obvious that it's just a game that takes place after the first game. Which I would say this game does. Except it doesn't because of the timeline thing. I don't know. It's actually hard to say. Because technically yes, but technically no. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? The experiment will begin soon. Please evacuate to your designated positions. We will do the same in case of an emergency. Only personnel registered as Arbiter may enter. Arbiter? What is this? Some kind of robot? Okay. Why do that? There's a definition, use it. Yeah, but even with the definition, it's complicated. Because the definition of sequel is a game... Well, I guess I should probably look it up. But, like, to me, it's a game sequel is a game whose events happen after the previous one, right? But this game does and doesn't happen after Chrono Trigger. Technically, it happens after Chrono Trigger because Chrono Trigger's events have already been erased from time when this game starts. But technically, it doesn't happen after Chrono Trigger because Chrono Trigger's been erased. So, you know what I mean? Like you could take it as both. See, now, with that definition, a published broadcast or recorded work that continues the story or develops the theme of an earlier one, 100% this is a sequel. I don't think anyone can deny that. It 100% develops the theme of the original game. Like, forget timelines, forget what's been erased, forget what's not been erased. It 100% continues after Chrono Trigger, if you're going by that definition. If Chrono Trigger is erased, why are the ghosts still around? Are you talking about these ghosts, or the ghosts we met before? The ghosts we met before, I have no idea. I have no idea why we met Chrono. Like, I don't know how that happened. Well, the way that the guy described it, in the Dead Sea, he said that, like, this place has been erased, but, like, you're seeing the memories because I've been here this whole time, yada yada. And then once we defeated him, we, like, erased that off the map. So, like, I guess that was, like, the lingering remembrance of Chrono Trigger. And then, like, we annihilated it, I guess. What do you mean I'm asking too many questions? I didn't ask a single question. I'm answering questions. I didn't ask any questions. So yeah, I guess that was like the lingering remembrance of Chrono Trigger, and then like we erased that. I didn't propose anything. I'm only talking about what I think is right. I didn't ask any questions. I was very specific to not ask questions. That way no one would answer. So, the only question I asked was the sequel thing. How were waffles invented? Someone poked holes in pancakes. Everyone gather around. Let's see. In the 11th century, a scientist by the name of Lucan indicated the possibility of time travel through the use of a time egg, which utilizes miniature black holes. Whether this could actually be possible or not is still the subject of intense debate, and no conclusions have been made. According to her theory, by rotating a single point of supergravity, space-time continua can be drawn in, thus making it possible to transform that singular point which pulls in everything else into a ring formation. Using this ring as a gate between dimensions, it should be possible to travel back and forth between various space-time. See, like, even though Chrono Trigger was erased, they're still talking about the characters. Because the characters still existed. The timeline was erased and we started over, but those characters still existed, and what the characters did still developed into what these characters figured out later. So, like, what they did still mattered, you know? I've heard that the time egg already existed during the legendary ancient dynasty. We shouldn't have to rely on theories from an ancient civilization that may not have even existed. We can do this. But it's been said that time was altered using the time egg. That's just a legend. There isn't any evidence to prove that this ancient dynasty ever existed. The experiment should be starting soon. After we discovered an unusual gravitational field in this barren sea of El Nido, we built several artificial islands and established Chronopolis. This is all done to facilitate our top-secret research. But now our research is about to come to its end. Once the final adjustments are made, the experiment will commence. It's just a matter of time, so everyone should keep up their good work. The chief hasn't returned yet. He hasn't? Then we'll have to hold off until he gets back. To think that time is not absolute but elastic, relative, and subjective, that there can be individual differences caused by changes in time. Perhaps the same people and life forms can even exist in several different space-times, an independent time that flows with a will of its own? Ha, what nonsense. I don't know, time is relative. We know that even with our rudimentary knowledge of time. Thanks, Einstein. Wow, this door doesn't open. Lame. Can I go through this door yet? Have I gone to the basement? Please present the Central Lab Zone registration card. I don't have that. Are we having a pancakes versus waffles debate? LL Cool J explained relativity the best. Thanks, LL Cool J. You're always there for us when we need you. I feel like I'm in the mood for pancakes more than I'm in the mood for waffles, but if I'm in the mood for one or the other, it's always better than the other one, you know? And like Ataru said, there's some waffles out there that'll beat the crap out of pancakes and vice versa. When I graduated high school, my mom took me to California for a week. That was like my graduation present. And we went to this little diner that had the greatest pancakes I've ever tasted. Like, those pancakes will never be defeated by any breakfast food, waffle or not, for the rest of my life. They were so good. I don't know what it was about. I don't know what... There wasn't anything special. They were just so good. Dude, I gotta admit, 9 times out of 10, French toast beats waffles and pancakes. I freaking love French toast. French toast is God, way better. Doesn't even have to enter the pancake waffle debate. It's just on top of all breakfast food. My wife makes these French toast. I don't even know what to call them, but they're French toast wrapped around sausage and then like baked. Man, they are delicious. Actual pigs in a blanket, that's right. Not no fake pigs. Real pigs. How's it going, Works? Good to see you, man. I'm missing something here, but what? Wait a second. I don't think Humans and reptiles. 65 million years ago, the reptiles who evolved from reptiles had developed their own unique civilization. This is long before the ancestors of humans, which evolved from primates, had developed their civilization. Excavations carried out on the central continent of Xenon have revealed that the reptiles already had advanced architectural skills in the prehistoric era. But the fall of Lavos to the planet and the resulting ice age that brought about rang the death knell for all reptiles and their civilization. After that, the reptiles slowly disappeared from the stage of history. However, in the distant past, humans could have been defeated in the contest of evolution and the reptiles could have continued to develop. It is not unthinkable that such a timeline could exist in other dimensions. Everything is purely a problem of possibilities, and the world is only stabilized by the viewpoint of the one who observes it. Observes it. Kind of words. There's nothing up here, huh? This looks so important, but... I think that room that had the big thing in the middle, I don't think I talked to everyone in there. I think I listened to what they said and then walked out and didn't talk to them. Or did I? I don't know. Biscuits and gravy are really good. Unless the biscuits are bad. Here, did I talk to everyone here? This research center was established under the utmost secrecy by the Central regime. They don't have much to say, do they? We may appear to be a military research center, but we're actually conducting research on time. Oh, wait. Okay, here we go. I tried to open this door earlier and it wouldn't open. I guess I was just not sitting in the right spot. I hate when that happens, dude. You can't open a door so you think it's locked, but actually you were just standing in the wrong spot. Then you walk around like an idiot forever trying to figure out what you're supposed to do, but you're really supposed to just open that door. Whoa. When do I get this? Oh, I can't use it. I need yellow. That's really good, though. The chief said he was going out for a walk. He's probably by the dock somewhere, gazing out to the sea. Good thing I read that before I got into that fight, because now I know where to go. Hopefully this guy tells me what he said again. Okay, good. He's probably by the dock somewhere gazing out to the sea. Oh, that's all he said. Can I open this? Nope. Oh, we know we gotta go now. Where you at, Chief? The Time Research Lab, which served as the foundation of this research center, appeared out of nowhere in the year 2300 and was headed up by the scientific genius Balthazar. However, at this peak of his career, he simply vanished. We've continued his work and have come this far. Our work is almost complete. Well, it's about time I headed back. The experiment's about to begin. Might as well save. Things are about to go down. By the way, is there anything in this lab that'll explain to me why there was a giant alien that I had to fight earlier? That'd be nice. Are these all save points? Look like save points. Fate is a large-scale prototype completed in the year 2300. It integrated the old Mother Brain computer circuitry into a more powerful supercomputer. Mother Brain? This Fate contains a massive amount of historical data dating up to the year 2400. This is the observation room. This is where we observe the two parallel worlds. Only two? The main computer of Chronopolis is called Fate. Thanks. The record of Fate is exposed? Two worlds that are so close and yet so far in nature exist in different dimensions, under the surveillance of the main computer of Chronopolis, Fate. In other words, Fate has always been observing the two parallel worlds and guiding them. Fate has been manipulating the world of El Nido in order to avoid any major change to the history it knows. In an event that El Nido influences the main continent, the year 2400 in which Fate exists would change. This paradox could potentially lead to great disaster. The records of Fate, Fate's terminals, collect data from around the world and input guidance directly into the minds of its users. In this discreet way, Fate is able to control the lives of people without them knowing. Guided by Fate, the people of El Nido lead a harmonious life. In a sense, they are nothing more than puppets of Fate. An instruction to the young girl in Arnie 1 to give up going to the main continent as a poet. An instruction to the man in Arnie 2 to give up becoming a fisherman. A plan to avoid any point of contact with the main continent so as not to affect history. However, ever since the formation of the Dead Sea 10 years ago, Fate has been unable to intervene directly with World 1. The best Fate could do was cross the dimension and receive data through the records of Fate. But with much difficulty, Fate succeeded in binding Miguel to the Dead Sea as a watchman. Pretty interesting. So imagine, like, this whole time, everyone that you've ever talked to that said, like, that believed that Fate was a real thing. Like, when you talk to somebody and you're like, oh, well, how do you think all this has happened the way it's happened? You'd be like, oh, well, it's just Fate. Like, Fate guides us to, you know, whatever, to the people we love, to the jobs that we get, to everything. Everything is devised by Fate. So imagine if Fate was actually a computer that was controlled by people of the future who control all of our, all the things that we think are Fate. They've actually been controlling it the whole time so that the future would happen the way it's supposed to happen. This reminds me a lot of one of my favorite movies. I told you guys a little while ago it's my favorite movie, but I think it might have lowered since then. But The Adjustment Bureau, that one has a little more of a Christian spin to it. But basically, like, God has these people in trench coats that go around slightly altering things so that everything goes to plan. That's kind of the way this works, only instead of it being God, it's just people from the future controlling a computer called Fate. But, yeah, it's got the same kind of feel to it, where, like, they just go in and make sure that Retro Gamer Dad spills his coffee at exactly 2 p.m. on a Saturday so that later something else happens so that nothing screws up the future. It's interesting. But, like, I love the premise behind this. I love that Fate isn't just this weird, like, what is Fate? It's just this thing that, like, exists that makes us do what we do. In this game, Fate is a literal computer controlled by the people of the future to make sure that their timeline stays normal. That's so cool. What an interesting look at, like, why things happen. Yeah, I highly recommend Adjustment Bureau. I think it's a really underrated movie. It's a Matt Damon movie, and it's a little bit over the top at times, but the general concept is really interesting. And the moral at the end is really interesting, too. It goes in a path that you don't expect. You know? Like, you really expect the ending to be one thing, and then it ends up being a different thing, and you're like, whoa, that's weird. So, it's a good movie. I like it. I recommend it. If you've often thought about, like, you know, if you have Christian beliefs, and you've often thought, like, how does God make all this stuff happen? Or if you don't have Christian beliefs and you've thought, like, you know, how exactly does fate work? How does, you know, how do we control fate or go against fate, or can we go against fate? Those kind of thoughts. Then it's a good movie to watch. It kind of gives you some insight, or just some, kind of explores that a little bit. Plus, you could probably buy it for like $2 because no one cares about that movie but me. So you can probably find it in the bargain bin for $1. What's up, Just One Thing? It's called The Adjustment Bureau. It's a Matt Damon movie. You should be able to find it real easy. In fact, if I type it into Amazon right now, I guarantee it'll be like $5. $4 to rent, $7 to buy. This Blu-ray is $10. I found a used DVD, I think, for $2. So yeah, you could probably get it pretty. Here's a Matt Damon 4 movies on one DVD for $9, and one of them's Adjustment Bureau. So yeah, you can get it pretty cheap. It's a good movie though. Who buys movies? I don't know if it's on like Netflix or anything. Probably find out. Yeah, I still buy movies that I like. I like to be able to see. I'm old-fashioned, so I like to be able to walk up to my shelf and see what I have. I hate scrolling through Netflix. I hate it. And I think a lot of other people hate it too, but they just think there's no other option. But all you do is you scroll through Netflix and you never decide on anything, and then you end up watching the same thing you've watched 500 times. I like to be able to like go up to my shelf and see my movies in alphabetical order and say like, I want to watch this, and then once I take it off the shelf, that's what I'm watching, and there's no like scrolling through for 5 hours. Same thing with games. I hate having games digitally on my PS4. I like to be able to look at them physically and have a stack sitting on my desk where I can be like, I'm going to play this, and then I'm going to play this, and then I'm going to play this, instead of having them all on my dashboard and then just like never playing any of them because there's too many of them. So, I'm old-fashioned, I know. Yeah, no, it's just so much better for me. Like, I hate scrolling through Netflix, like, especially with my son. We don't watch stuff too often, but when we do, you know, on Netflix, it's like, what in the world am I gonna, like, I don't know. It just feels really nice. Like, we have a little shelf with, like, all of his movies, like, all of our Disney movies and, like, kid-friendly movies. And it's so great to just be like, Ben, pick out a movie, and then he'll like walk over and look at the movies and like pick one out, and then we watch it, and it's great. It's like, I don't know, it's just an experience you don't really get with Netflix. To be able to like actually look at your movies with your son and like pick one and watch it and then enjoy it. He'll sit there and like hold the case while we watch the movie, you know? I don't know, it's just cool. Oh yeah, and some behind-the-scenes stuff is good. I used to want to be, when I was growing up, I've told you guys this before, kind of like my dream job was to be an author when I was growing up. But when I decided that being an author would be really hard, and probably not pan out so well. My backup for a while was I wanted to be a movie director, which sounds silly, like that's even a harder thing than being an author. But I figured I could start with just doing jobs in the movies and then work my way up to director or something that's, you know, at least a little higher up in movies. But yeah, I wanted to be involved in like the movie making process. And when I got into YouTube and started making videos, that's kind of how I got my start, was like I was directing my own YouTube videos. And then I figured I would take that and put it to school and then eventually do something in the movie area. So there was this point in my life where I was like watching a lot of behind the scenes stuff on DVDs and Blu-rays to try to learn how the movie making process worked so that I would be a step ahead when I went to school for movies. So yeah, I love having like DVDs and Blu-rays where I can look at the behind the scenes and everything. Which, super aside here, if anyone here is a fan of Disney and you like the movie Moana, the behind the scenes stuff that I don't know exactly like which one there, because there's a couple, but I would just watch all of them. The Blu-ray of Moana, the behind the scenes on that Blu-ray is probably like the best behind the scenes I've ever watched. And it's not like, it doesn't go super deep into the actual creation process, but instead it talks about the directors in their visit to the islands that they based the movie on, and what they experienced there, and how they took the culture of the people there and put it in the movie. And it's fascinating. It's really, really good. If you like behind the scenes stuff and you like Disney, I cannot recommend enough. Watch the behind the scenes of the Moana Blu-ray. If you have it sitting around and you already watched the movie but you never watched the behind the scenes, take a good 20 minutes and watch all of them, because it's like the greatest. It made me appreciate that movie so much more, because watching it you kind of feel like, oh, they just took like the culture of the people and just kind of used that for a movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they made a movie based on the islands, but it's not really about the islands. It's about their crazy story they came up with. But when you watch the behind the scenes, you realize like legitimately the entire movie is all about what they learned at the islands. So it's pretty cool. It's like, I mean, I don't want to say that it's the most authentic, because I don't know that to be a fact, but for me personally, I think it's the most authentic movie I've ever seen, in terms of like, because they literally had, they had a group of, I think it was like 12 people from the islands during their process. Like they would go to, I don't know where it was, California, Florida, wherever. They'd make part of the movie and then they'd fly back to the islands and get together with these 12 people who lived on the islands, and they would watch that part of the movie and tell them like, that's wrong, that person wouldn't be wearing that, you know, this isn't what this story is about, those tattoos don't match the tattoos we get, all these little things. And then they'd come back and change everything so that it was like perfectly aligned with the actual culture. And I've never heard of that happening before. I'm sure it's happened before and I just haven't seen it, but I've never heard of that happening before. I've never heard of a company like specifically doing that. I figured they would just take the general idea of the islands and then just like run with it. But they literally every step of the way were like, is this right? Is this right? Are these tattoos right? Is this music correct? You know, and I think they said like, I mean, Moana, the girl that plays Moana is from the islands. The guy that did all the music is from the islands. The Rock is from the islands, who plays Maui. So, like, you know, they legitimately got as close to the islands as they possibly could for the movie. So yeah, it's really, really authentic. And watching the movie, you might not think that. So, because it's Disney, and you figure like Pocahontas and whatnot, you look at it and you're kind of like, is this really? But yeah, it made me appreciate that movie a lot more. Yeah, you look at movies like Pocahontas and you're like, absolutely accurate, right? But, and that's exactly how I felt watching Moana. I was like, wow, this is another Pocahontas. Like, You know, like, and that's not exactly a bad thing, but it's cool when it's more authentic. You know, like, I'm not saying that Pocahontas is a bad movie just because it's not accurate, but like, watching Moana, I had the same feeling where I was like, this probably isn't as accurate as it could have been, but it's a good movie. But then watching the behind the scenes, I found out, like, wow, this really is like one of the most accurate movies they could have possibly made, you know? So. And even the story is a story that the Islanders, like, passed down, you know what I mean? And I think, okay, I hate to go on this tangent because we're playing Chrono Cross, not playing a Disney movie, but real quick, the coolest thing about the behind the scenes for Moana is the story takes place, like, the general idea behind Moana is the Islanders would travel to different islands and settle there, create a community, and then they travel to another island, right? So, like, they were what were they called? I'm missing the word here. Hold on. What was the word? I can't think of the word. Not nomads. We'll call them nomads, though. So they travel to different islands. They would settle there. They would create a community, and then they move on to another island. And then they stopped randomly. They stopped, and the reason they stopped is because Maui stole the heart of Te Fiti, and then everything became darkness, and then they were afraid to travel, and then the Moana happens, right? So, like, Moana is the story of why did they stop traveling? Well, it's because of the darkness and everything. But the cool thing is that actually happened in real life. In real life, they traveled to a bunch of different islands, settled there, created a community, moved on to the next island, created a community, moved on to the next island, and then they stopped for a ridiculous amount of time. I forget how long it was. It was like hundreds of years. They just stopped randomly. They went through multiple generations of people. I want to say it was 1,000 years, but that sounds crazy. But I think it was. It was like 500 or 1,000 years that they just stopped, and they made, for like that long of a time, they went through generation. They never stepped foot off their islands, and then randomly they started again. And there's never been an explanation as to why that happened. No one knows. So Moana is the story of maybe what happened. Which obviously that didn't happen because magic. But it's cool that, like, the story of Moana is potentially what happened as to why, like, a story as to why they didn't travel for 1,000 years. So that's, like, a really cool, you know what I mean? Like, stuff like Toy Story and Pocahontas and stuff is more of just their own crazy whatever, or like Pocahontas is just a retelling of, like, when they first came to the New World. But Moana is actually, like, that, other than the magic, that could have happened. You know what I mean? Like, that could have, that it explains. It's like a magical explanation as to why they didn't travel for 1,000 years. So, like, how cool is that? That they actually, you know, came up with a real, this is, okay, they didn't travel for 1,000 years, no one knows why, let's create that story. Like, that's so cool, you know? Okay, tangent over. Sorry. We'll go back to Chrono Cross now. But yeah, I don't know. It's just cool. I like it. I like when movies attempt to explain something that we don't know. You know? That's so much more interesting to me than just saying, like, what if when the settlers came to the New World, there was also magic? You know? Instead, it's actually explaining this weird phenomenon that happened. It's actually explaining, hey, look, these people didn't travel for 1,000 years, and we don't know why. Let's explain it in a cool Disney magical way, you know? It all began with a notebook my mother handed me. She told me she found it while cleaning out the closet. This old notebook covered with mold was a diary that belonged to my grandfather who passed away years ago. It contained my grandfather's distant memories. That's a random thing for a computer to say. Does this device play back archives? Looks like someone's memoirs. I wonder if you still remember how we first met and our many adventures. It all seemed like a dream. We ran like the wind during those warm summer days long ago. You were a piece of a star that fell from the sky. I can still relive the memories of those days long past, just by closing my eyes like such and whispering your name into the desolate night. Kid. Kid. Radical Dreamers. Well, that's important. What is this? Radical Dreamers? What does this mean? There is a conversation with a comrade. Are you ready, kid? I know you're anxious, but stay on your toes. Yeah, likewise, mate. You mess up, and I'm leaving you behind. Got that, Surge? Come on, Majil, let's go. That jerk Lynx is gonna get what he deserves. Say your prayers. Not that it'll do you any good. This seems to be an archive from a different time than our own. Aside from the two worlds we already know about, other worlds and times may also exist. You know one thing that I enjoy about this game? The characters aren't idiots. Like, a lot of times in these RPGs, when you get to a point where, like, the story starts going crazy, the characters are always like, what? This is so confusing. But instead the characters, like, actually kind of understand what's going on. They understand as much as we do. Yeah, it's not Tales of Symphonia where every 2 seconds the characters are like, what? We're not dealing with Lloyd and his infinite ridiculousness. Okay, wait. I got a key card, but is it this key card? Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's okay for the characters to be confused, but it gets really annoying when, like, the whole goddamn game, Lloyd is just walking around going, I don't get this. Can we hit stuff? It kind of makes you not care about the story as much when the characters don't care. And, like, I think it's important to have one character like that, kind of like in Final Fantasy VII, where Barrett's the one to kind of be like, forget the story, I just want to shoot stuff. But even he, like, understands it somewhat and tries to understand it somewhat. He's not just, like, the whole time being like, I don't care, I just want to shoot stuff. And then you have characters that actually do care. And Barrett's also not the main character. The problem with Tails is that Lloyd was the main character. And something about the main character not caring about the story kind of rubs you the wrong way because you want them to care. Because you're the main character, you're the person playing, like you want the main character to care. Smack him up. Oop. Oh well. Why didn't Kid come back to your party when Surge got his body back? Because Kid got wrecked. When we first changed to Lynx, we killed her. Or at least harmed her. And then Lynx took over. So we don't know what happened to Kid. I mean, we like... This was like 3 weeks ago, so I'm trying to remember. We did like officially kill her, right? Didn't we bury her? But that was in one timeline, so like we don't know exactly like if she's gone forever or not. But in the timeline that we turned into, or the world rather, that we turned into Lynx, we straight up killed her, didn't we? I'm pretty sure we like straight up buried her and everything. Maybe not though, because I think right after we turned into right after we turned into Lynx, we, like, teleported into that crazy universe, right? So we don't actually know what happened to her body. So she could still be alive. But, I mean, we gave her a big stab, so... We still don't know exactly why we could see into the future, either. Because we saw us stabbing Kid way before we ever stabbed her. So for some reason, we could, like, see the future. And we still don't really know why. Go ballistic. Yeah, we fought her. I don't know, obviously there's still a lot that we don't know. Like, for example, we still don't know why there's, like, 2 Surges. Because we never beat Evil Surge. He ran away. But we still got Surge's body back somehow. So, like, I don't even know what body we're in. We're in, like, Surge number 2's body. How do you miss? I'm trying to not use elements so I can heal after this battle. I think I'm gonna have to. I'll just heal now. It was a stuffed clone. God dang, are you serious? I've never seen such a fast robot that just dodges everything. This is the fastest robot of all time. Also, I don't know how he's not dead yet. Yeah, Evil Surge is Lynx, but Lynx still has Surge's body. Like, he never transferred back. So, the body we have is from, like, some other planet. I don't know. Because we didn't, like, take our body back. We got a new one. We initiated the Chrono Cross, and then it was like, here, have this new body. We were like, thanks, bro. And that was that.